Hello YouTube, this is Froogle, and today we're going to look at a very cool tool called Fsipanel, which is a training aid. Now, when we simulate, we tend to do things quite unrealistically compared to how real pilots use simulators. Real pilots tend to do the same thing over and over, like they'll shoot approaches again and again and again with different conditions each time, or they'll practice a failure again and again and again at a key phase of flight, such as takeoff or landing or in a pattern or something like that. Fsipanel is one of two apps that have recently come out that let us do that in FSX and Prepar3d. The other one being a similar app I can't remember the name of from Elite Simulations. So let me show you what Fsipanel is. It's a little bit ugly, but ignore the ugliness. Here it is here. Now, in the actual flight videos, you're going to see some shearing. That's obviously because I'm running on a window, so excuse the shearing. I have to run on a window to show you all of this on one computer. Now, this will run on two computers, but it has some issues. It's fairly new, and the developer is very active with patching it. Just before I recorded this, in fact, I fired up the app, and it patched itself. So he's very active. He's fixing bugs. I've found while it does work over a network, it just has a few quirks, and I find it better on a single PC. What you can do here, let's go through this from the beginning. So you have a setup button here. You can see it supports FSX. It also supports Prepar3d, but here's the but. It supports a number of very complex aircraft out of the gate. So the PMDG 737. The 777, the Airbus Extended, all versions of it, so the 318 all the way up to the 321 from Aerosoft, the Dash 8 Q400 from Majestic. It also supports the Level D 767, the iFly 737, the PMDG 747, quite a lot there. In Prepar3d, however, here's the but, it only supports Prepar3d aircraft. So that would be the iFly 737, the Aerosoft Airbus, and the Majestic Dash 8 Q400. So I'm going to run this up in FSX, partly also because in Prepar3d I'm having some issues lately in that it crashes if I slew aircraft. But what you do, you can click on Add Extended Mode. You have these drop downs. You choose your aircraft from the drop down, select variant, select delivery, and then you can set a configuration for it. So you can see here my 737 is set up as an 800 with winglets, max landing weight, flaps 30. So that's the configuration for landing for this aircraft. On the Dash 8 Q400, those of you that spent any time with this aircraft know that it's dramatically different. Flaps 15 landing compared to flaps 35. So I have two configurations of the aircraft there, flaps 15 and flaps 35. Now, in options, there's some interesting things here that we'll cover in a minute. Let me turn off statute miles here. First of all, down here, FSX memory leak protection. What the app does is it reloads the situation. You can set up a situation, it reloads it again and again and again and again. And you can find that memory usage creeps up to the point that FSX will eventually crash. So you can stop that happening by saying, put in memory leak protection, and I want it to reboot FSX after 3 restarts, or I can do it on every restart, or when we hit a memory limit. So I'm going to put in a memory limit here, I'll say 2.8. That should be fine for me. So there's that. Pilot challenges. This is a very cool feature. Just by changing the squawk code in the aircraft, Fsipanel will reload the thing you just did, and it will reload it with different conditions. So what I can say here is I can say max wind speed. Let's put this up at 50. I'm going to use this in this video. And I can change this to 5, 10, 15, whatever. And what happens is if I set that squawk code, I think it's 7002 or something. When I land and I put the parking brake on, it will reload the condition, let me land again, and increase the crosswind. So I can practice my crosswind landings again and again and again with progressively harder and more powerful crosswinds. You can also customize stuff here, such as short final distance, long final distance, downwind positions, all sorts of stuff, completely customizable. You don't really care about that though, do you? You care about this. So you already saw in the sim, I'm flying the default flight, so I've got the little, whatever you call that, gyrocopter thingy loaded, and you can set up the Fsipanel to use any aircraft you want, at any airport you want, doing any kind of approach you want, and it will set the sim up completely exactly how you want to how you specify here. So let's load up the 737. I select that one. So 737, we are going to fly an approach into KMCO, so Orlando. Select this airport, and we're going to do runway 18 left, and we're going to do this as an 8-mile final. Now, I'm not going to set the weather. I can set the weather up. I'll show you that in a second. But if I now click on Move Aircraft, and I move Fsipanel out of the way, watch what happens. Okay, now I actually cut the video there because I screwed up a little bit. 18 right is the one I want with ILS. Anyway, once it's loaded, depending on the aircraft, it will do all sorts of configurations. So what's going to happen here is the aircraft itself will initialize. It will do all its normal PMDG stuff, and then FSI panel will kick in. It will trim the aircraft, set the radios up. You can notice flaps are already down. Auto brake is set to level 2. Gear is down. So it's configured quite a lot already. You just sit and wait until it tells you what it wants you to do. So you can see top left of the screen, it says My Control. Initializing all the systems, please stand by. Now it says My Control trimming your aircraft, so again we wait while it trims correctly. And you can see the radios have been set up for ILS 18 right. There's the glide slope. There's the localizer there. In fact, let's get rid of the yoke here. There's the localizer. We're on the localizer. Done. So now it says please arm approach, check the autopilot's engaged, when ready switch off pause. So we'll set command B, we will arm approach, reset my view, unpause, and now we're flying the approach. You can see the autopilot's taken over, it's putting us, we were a little bit off the localizer, it's putting us back on it, waiting to intercept the glide slope, and when you're ready, I mean you can either auto land if you want to be really boring, what's the point of that? You can disable the autopilot and away you go, which is what we're going to do in a second. So let's have at it and see how badly I do. So I'm going to get rid of my menu bar here. And if you see any shearing in this video, please forgive it. It's because I'm running on a window. But anyway, that's all done. So let's disable Command B and Command A. Reset my view. And we will fly this approach now. I have complete control. So I'm going to turn the auto throttle off. Let's increase my throttle so they match, which is about there. Auto throttle off. And we will fly a fully manual approach, confident that the aircraft is configured, and any mistakes that happen at this point are all my own. So I'm a little bit under. Now when you touch down, you'll get a landing report. It will grade you. It will give you a very detailed report of how you did, tell you if you need more training, and so on and so on. Now we're keeping the scenario here fairly simple. You can see there's no weather loaded. Everything is very simple. And with that cut I did in the video, I've actually reloaded this a few times, so my memory usage is actually very high right now, 2.87 gig. So hopefully the memory protection is going to kick in as well, at which point it will simply shut down the sim on the next approach and then reload it and clear out all the memory. Okay, let's bring our speed down. We are a little bit too high on the speed. Slightly off course now, going to the right,
1,000.
a little bit low, nose up, which will help us get our speed down as well. I think this is probably the first video where I've actually flown the NGX on this channel without efforts to crew as well. I need to do more videos on that. Anyway, so we're descending nicely now, we're getting back on the localizer. We are a little bit high, which is great because I want to show you the landing analysis. So I'm not going to say all mistakes are intentional, they're not, but it's useful if we do make some mistakes. You can see what it does on that analysis, which is actually very, very cool. There we go, we're on the speed now. Slightly off. Let's move this to the left. The scenery here, by the way, is Taxi to Gates, Orlando. Very, very good scenery. Very detailed and frame intensive, unfortunately. But very pretty and attractive to look at. Okay, we're a little bit high. We're not completely on the glide slope, which is great. It will grade us on that. Let's try to hit the center line as much as we can.
30. 20.
See, I'm floating it long now. This is intentional.
10.
And we're down. Nose is down, reverse is up. Or not, my reversers are not working. Wrong lever. Right, 80 knots. So come off the reversers. So not a perfect landing, which is exactly what we wanted. So I'm going to pause the sim here. Let me show you Fsipanel. You can see we've got a button lit up now that says landing report. I can click that open, check that out. So it's telling me my landing distance satisfactory, not ideal, 2,500 feet. That's crazy. Should have been about 600, 700. I deviated from the center line 1.4 feet to the right, which is very good but not perfect. It was a positive landing, quite a heavy landing to be honest, 320 feet per minute, and my bank angle was 0, so I was level. I did have wings level, that's perfect. And you can see there's my localizer deviation, so I was a little bit left, then I was a little bit right, and then back on. Overall, my glide path deviation was good. There was a slight variance here, but overall pretty good. That's the landing report. So that's pretty cool, right? Notice up here as well it says runway 18 right, havoc, wind is 0, and everything was great. Nothing untoward there. Let's change this up a little bit. I don't know what the weather's like outside right now. I know earlier today it was pretty awful. So let's go ahead and load up weather. So we go actual. Here are the various METAR reports. Let's load an earlier one, so that one. And you say set weather. And what we can do now, we'll once again choose that once again. This time I'll go 4 mile or 3 mile final. There we go. Move aircraft. Get rid of Fsipanel. Watch what happens. There's FSUIPC's memory warning. So it's not going to reset this time. It is going to reset after this flight. I'm looking at Fsipanel because it gives you a readout of memory usage. I'm at 3.24 gig right now, so that's why you have the memory protection stuff in there, which is kind of cool. I'm surprised it didn't reset right now. Our memory's dropping now, that's why. So there we go. Now we got some more interesting weather. A little bit of wind, quite a lot of cloud. It was a dreary old day here in Orlando earlier, and we'll wait once again. It's trimming. Let's click into the sim so the sound comes back. So don't worry about any warnings you hear, like we just heard a glide slope warning. That's completely fine, because Fsipanel, when it's finished, will put you back where you need to be. So we're all good now. Arm approach, check the autopilot's engaged, and away we go. Let's do it again. So arm approach. Now at this point, this is where things actually get very, very cool. What you can do, if I bring Fsipanel back, I'm not going to do it, but see this take snapshot? You could set the aircraft up on approach. Now I'm doing simple approaches here, 3 miles, 8 miles. You can do much more complex, and I'll show you in a second. But once you set the aircraft up, you can go ahead and configure a bunch of other stuff. So it will let you manage engine failures, but if you want to do more complex stuff, you can set that up in PMDG. You know, go into the PMDG options in the CDU, set up one of the complex failures, get everything exactly where you want it, get it failed, establish the autopilot so it's holding the aircraft straight and level and good to go, and then take a snapshot. And then again, using squawk codes, as soon as you land, you can rerun that snapshot. So you can simulate over and over and over again complex failures, which is very cool. Just like the real pilots do in real sims. Let's unpause this now. Alright, so we're 3 mile final. I am going to take control. Let's get back on the path here. We're a little bit high now. Kind of frantically managing everything at 3 miles out. So coming off the speed, letting the nose drop. See how we do this time. Back on the speed, let's get back on that glide slope. A little bit low, slow I should say, not low. You can see the gust of wind there, shook the cockpit a little. Sorry, flight deck. And again, as before, a little bit too high. Let's try not to do a long landing this time.
100. 50. 30. 20. 10.
Alright, reverses. knots, so off the reversers. And we'll pause the sim and look at that landing report. Long landing. This one was worse. 3,000 feet, so it was a long landing. Positive landing again, but not as bad as before, and so on and so on and so on. Repeat, rinse and repeat. It's fantastic. Other stuff you can do in here. Let's go and look at this 3 mile ILS. What you can do here is all sorts of interesting stuff. So I can do a takeoff if I want from 1/8 right. I can do a left hand pattern, a right hand pattern. Let me show you how it looks. Pretty cool. You can customize all this stuff in the options, so how far out the pattern is supposed to go. You can do air work, 10,000 feet, 20,000, 30,000. So if you wanted to simulate decompression at 30,000 feet, you can do that. Let's go into this. XNM final. So I can put in a distance here and customize where I am there. There is a way of doing a fix. Let me see if I can find that. That's not it. Left hand vectors, right hand vectors. I can't find where it was, but there was a way of doing a fix here. I can't for the life of me remember where it is, but you can actually go ahead and set up a very, very customized position. You could, if you want to do a complex approach into somewhere like Innsbruck, you can specifically set the aircraft at a specific position, height, speed, heading, and everything, which is very useful as well. Slew aircraft is how you do the aircraft this doesn't support. So if you want to do stuff in the A2A Cessna, for example, or the Real Air Duke, what you would do is get your aircraft on the runway, get it powered up, take off, and then come in here and say 1/8 right, slew the aircraft. That's very useful, not so much for practicing approaches, but for practicing tricky conditions like an engine out. So if you wanted to take the Duke out, fail one of the engines, you could do that, then come in here and say runway whatever, 8 mile final, slew the aircraft, and it will move it to that position. Let's go ahead and change the aircraft. I'll show you how that works as well. So let's fire up the aircraft that I really am quite poor at, which is the Dash 8, the Q400. So we select that. It's selected at the top, so it's a flaps 15 landing. We'll go ahead and we'll change this to something that's going to tax the memory quite a lot now. Let's go EGKK, select airport, runway, let's go 26 left, fix, 8 mile final. And once again, we'll load the weather. We'll make this actual weather for England, so that's going to be pretty awful. And move the aircraft. Now, I think with that memory usage, it might actually reboot the sim. It did. You see that? So there's the memory protection kicking in. When it reboots the sim, it takes care of setting everything up for you. You don't need to select anything. So it will load the sim, load the aircraft, load the situation, and away you go. Now, as you've seen, I've kept this fairly simple, just doing straight approaches. But as you also saw when I went through the options there, you can do approaches, you can do, full approaches, you can do pattern work, you can do takeoffs, anything you want you can simulate in this, and using that snapshot feature you can do it over and over and over again. It is very, very flexible. The big downside with this though, it's developed by one guy, French guy, and he's done an outstanding job. It is ugly to look at, but you know what, so are the actual sim interfaces that real pilots use to do this stuff. It's quite similar to those in its ugliness. The other big downside though is the price. This is $45, so it's not cheap. It's not something you buy on a whim. You've got to be fairly serious about getting good at a particular aircraft and using this tool for what it's intended for. But it is well supported. He is extending it. He is fixing bugs and all sorts of stuff. I think it's worth the money. I'm enjoying it because, as I said, I'm not very good at the Q400 here. So giving me the opportunity to repeatedly practice set conditions in this aircraft is fabulous. All right, this is useful. Q400... You need to set the power levers to get the speed that it says. Notice that we are approaching Gatwick while we're doing this. That's not a problem. So it wants us at 135 to 145. So I'm adjusting the power levers, trying to get in that speed range. And then what will happen is once we are pretty stable at holding that speed, it will slew us back to the beginning of the approach. So your controls now are all set up exactly where they need to be to fly this approach. So I'm just increasing the power a little bit, trying to hold the speed there. You can see it's still dropping there. No, a bit more. Typically atrocious conditions at Gatwick. A bit more power. There. So any second, FSI panel will spot that I've stabilized the speed. It will take control, slow us back, and say, "This is what I want you to do next." Which, just like in the NGX, in this aircraft is going to be. Here we go. So it's moved us all the way back. JD autopilot's engaged. Arm approach and turn off pause. So autopilot is engaged. Let's arm approach. There, you can see localizer came up down here. And we're good to go and fly this approach. This is not going to be pleasant, people. But this is why we train. This is why we practice. As my 3-year-old says, practice, practice, practice. Here we go. So autopilot's on, approach is armed. All we need to do is manage to power, no auto throttle in the Q400. And again, just like the NGX, this aircraft is configured. Notice we chose, well, you might remember we chose the flaps 15 configuration. So you can see down here, landing flaps 15, gear is down. If we were to pop outside, which I'm not going to do, obviously, at this critical stage, you would see all the lights are on and everything is good.
2500.
When you fly a pattern, by the way, it actually creates a flight plan. So in the NGX or the 777, you actually load something called Fsipanel 01 as a company route. That is the plan for the pattern. You can either follow it with the autopilot or at the very least use the flight director to help you. And as with any other situation that you can simulate with Fsipanel, change the conditions. So put in crosswinds, put in microbursts, put in rain, all that good stuff. Now, as I said, it does support prepared, so you can do some approaches with very complex weather conditions and improved graphics and all that good stuff. I'm having a problem with prepared lately in that if I slew an aircraft, which is what this tool does, then I end up crashing. I get the R60 whatever it is error and I can't resolve it. So that's why I'm doing everything in FSX. But I don't care because this thing takes care of the out of memory problem and reboots the sim as you just saw. It's pretty good. Alright, 1,900 feet. I'm going to get this thing well and truly established because I am no good at this aircraft. And around about 1,000 feet we will disarm the autopilot and go. Just bringing the power back, speed is dropping. Trying to hold the speed level there. Notice also it does set up the correct V speeds for you in any aircraft that it supports. Obviously, if you're using an aircraft not supported like the A2A1s or a Real Air Duke or something like that, you'd need to manage all that stuff yourself and the radios. But that's not really what this tool is for, although you can use it to practice in those aircraft. It is designed to teach you the very complex study aircraft it supports. Right, 1,000. Good luck. Good luck, Froogle. Oh, I paused it. I didn't disarm the autopilot. I actually paused it. I'm that nervous. Okay, autopilot off. Let's see how we do. Watching my speed. Watching my position, obviously. About to get a little bit high. Murky conditions at Gatwick today. The other thing, of course, you can do with this is practice all those things that we hate to do on our VA flights. So you just flown your 777 for 12 hours straight. The last thing you want to do really is a go-around. So you can practice go-arounds in this. Aborted landings, holds.
500.
It's very, very flexible. It's just got a clunky interface as you saw it. It looks very, very basic, but there's a lot of depth hidden in there. Read the manuals. You've really got to read the manual. It's a fairly small PDF.
Plus 100.
It's got everything you need to know. The forums for Fsipanel are very active. Whoa. See, now would be a good time to go around.
Minimums. Minimums. Light slope.
Yeah, we know.
100.
Let's see how we
50.
do.
40. 30. 20. 10.
Bit of a thump. And drifting off the center line at the end there. Let's pause. And let's see how Fsipanel thinks we did. Landing report. Oh, an unsafe landing. Look at that. 32 feet to the left. Close to a hard landing. Not very good, but this is why we use this tool. Anyway, as always, my name is Froogle. Let me know in the comment section below if you would find a tool like this useful. And I will see you all next time. Thanks for watching.